Greetings, traveler. Recently, a traveler named SLR Mod Shop asked what Houdini is and if I could share more details about it. I think it's a very interesting topic because it's a really cool tool that I use for making my game, and I think that's what I want to talk about today. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 13 years now, actually, and at some point in my career, we had to make a game with a very, very small team. How small? Two people. And in those two people, there was no dedicated artist. So I had to basically find a way to create graphics for this very ambitious game that I had in mind, but there had to be a lot of, the scale was big, and I had to find something that could produce that scale of graphics without using per se somebody who's very good at creating beautiful shapes and modifying them and so on. So my research brought me to the concept of procedural generation, and specifically to Houdini, because it seemed like it could do that. So I'm just gonna jump in and I'm gonna share their website to begin with. By the way, this isn't sponsored in any way. I'm not getting any money for saying this. I just really like it and it has helped me a lot. So that's why I wanted to share it with you. So what is Houdini? It's a type of software for creating 3D graphics, among many other things. It's similar, I guess, to Maya and ZBrush and so on, but it works quite differently in some areas. So it can make very beautiful things. It can create very large environments, lots and lots of objects very quickly. It's very powerful in that sense. It has been used for so many movies in Hollywood and so many games already. You can have a look at the reels here if you're interested to see specific examples. The cool thing about it is that, in my opinion, is that it doesn't require you to go in and use your manual dexterity with a mouse or a pen or something to create very beautiful shapes and graphics. It uses this type of node workflow. Not only, there's some alternatives inside it, but this is the one I want to talk about today a little bit. And it can be used for so much, for creating models, for animation, for rigging, creating textures, UV maps, renders, creating materials, you name it. It can make so many things, and because it does so in a procedural way, the great power it has, and I'm going to show you this feature in a bit as well, is that you don't have to get married essentially to your work. And if you want to make a big change, you have to start from scratch. You don't have to do that. You can always keep your work easy to update. You can add things later on, and I'm going to show you what I mean in just a moment. It also comes with a lot of presets, so you don't have to create everything from scratch, especially things that are used very often in game development or movies and so on. So there's several versions. I'm going to be talking about the core features mainly today. So there's also the FX features, which is like very cinematic explosions, beautiful clouds, like lasers, like very visual effects, stuff like that. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about this kind of operation, the Boolean, and how you can do it in practice. Yeah, like I said, there's so many things you can do with this software. And I'm also going to be talking about terrain a little bit. So that's a topic that really interests me, how you can create vast, beautiful terrains without having to going in and hand sculpting every single detail that you see here. Houdini is very good at generating very large terrains like that, so I want to talk about that as well. I'm also going to leave a link in the description to this page, so you can check out this page for yourself too. So let's jump into Houdini itself. All right, so this is what Houdini looks like. I apologize if you cannot see the font here. The letters, they're quite small even on my screen. So what do we have here? What's going on? So Houdini in this form has this big screen here where you can see your work. There is one smaller window here where you can see details of each node, and there is this window down here where you have your node tree and you can add to it and subtract from it and so on. Customize it as you like. Up here, there's a typical file edit and so on menu, so that should be similar to many other things. And the reason why I say that this is not really the typical image of Houdini is because you can actually customize it to look like whatever you want, right? If you're using a lot of tools, for example, that have to do with trees, you can put lots of tree generation related links up here. Or if you're using this for movies specifically, or for games specifically, or any type of work you're doing, you can customize all of this to suit you. And in fact, Houdini comes with a bunch of preset layouts for the UI itself here, so you can start with any of these. The games is right here, and basically you can see what you like. So another disclaimer, I'm not an artist, I'm a master at this software. It's just that I had such a good experience using it and learning about it, and teaching my team how to use it, and then seeing them become so much more better than me and creating amazing things with it, that I'm a really enthusiastic believer, I suppose, in what it can do and the graphics it can deliver. So today I want to talk a little bit about how the workflow is different from something like some other software where you directly go in and try to change a shape by pulling it and pushing it and cutting from it and so on. So let's take a very simple example. For this, let's go into our window down here that we manipulate our node tree, and just create a cube node. I'm just going to put it down here. Probably you can't see it right now. So again, there's so many things here that we could possibly go into, but let's try to keep it as simple as possible. So zooming in, we have our cube here. I'm going to jump in, but this cube describes an entire scene essentially. When you are at this like top level of the node tree, each node like this can represent an entire scene. So the idea here is that you can create 1, 2, 3, as many scenes as you want, and even merge them all together in the end. So it's extremely powerful in that sense. So let's just jump into this scene, because we created a cube node for the scene. It already assumes that we're going to have a cube inside our scene, so this box node is already put down for us. And you can see that this node has these parameters up here. So because right now it's clicked and selected, this window changes to see the parameters of this box node, and you can see the box here as well. So another interesting point is that you can choose which node you want to look at by clicking this blue icon, and I'm going to show you how this works in a moment. So what do we want to do with this box? Let's say I want to modify it to cut this corner in a very beautiful spherical way. Now, like I said, I'm not an artist, so even if I had the perfect tools, I just don't have the knowledge and the manual dexterity to make a beautiful cut like the one I have in mind. And what I have in mind is taking, let's say, a sphere. There you go, sphere node. So right now you cannot see the sphere in our viewport right here, right? So that's because this blue option here is set to the box, which means that in the viewport I want to be seeing this node. And because we have nothing here, we don't see the sphere anywhere. But because we have selected the sphere node, we have this yellow outline on the node, and right now we're seeing the sphere parameters actually up here. So whichever you have selected, the parameters appear in this top window here. So if we want to see the sphere, we click here, and now we have the sphere. And right now these two objects, they have the same origin and approximately the same size. So let's go and modify that. So there's, again, many ways to modify it. If you are more used to directly manipulating shapes like this, for example, there's controls on the object itself. There's millions of options about how to look at things, how to manipulate them, and so on. But like I said, I'm not great with manual dexterity, so I'm gonna go for a more simple approach. So I just click the sphere node, and in its parameters, there is the center set of parameters. So where it is centered on the scene, right? So I'd like to move it to the corner of the cube, as I mentioned before, but right now I don't even know where the cube is. So something cool we can do is click on the, rather make the box visible, and then with the blue option here, and then click on the sphere, and this way we can have both of them appear on the screen, and the sphere is going to be kind of like a shadow. So what I'm doing here, which might look a bit strange to you, is that I'm not just directly typing in a value here, because I'm not sure how much to the side I want to move the sphere. So something cool you can do with this software is you can middle click, and this menu comes up. And this menu tells you by how much do you want to change this value, like what sort of increment, 0.1, 1, 10, 100. So that's really useful if you need to have accessible very strong pronounced changes or very small delicate changes. So let's go with 1. Let's put it a bit to the side like this, and let's put it a bit up. Oh, not that much, maybe this much, and then let's also move it a bit towards us. Yes, that's the thing I'm looking for. Very good. So what I want to do is keep this cube as a base shape, but I just want to cut this corner in a very beautiful spherical way. So how would I do that? I right click down here and I look for the Boolean node. And now you might be thinking, well, Boolean, isn't that the thing from math? How can you use that to cut shapes? Well, what Houdini can do is use this Boolean operation and apply it to 3D shapes. And what we're doing here is I'm going to connect these two nodes to this Boolean node down here. Essentially, the Boolean node tells you that give me two things, two shapes, and I'm going to perform the operation you want me on them. So I'm going to show you how that works in a moment. So to give it a reference to these two shapes that we made, the box and the sphere, you click on this little circle down here and you drag it to the top part of the Boolean node, and the same for the sphere. So you connect these two nodes to the Boolean, so the Boolean knows it's going to operate on these two objects. Now let's move the this blue icon down to the Boolean so we can see the final thing. And now that we have selected the Boolean, we can see all the things we can do that are specifically related to the Boolean, right? So here, the output geometry, in the output geometry section, we choose subtract, and then you can choose you want to subtract A from B, A being this left input here and B being the right input, or you can do the other way around, or you can do both if you want. So in my case, I want to subtract B from A. So this is what it's going to look like, essentially. So this way I get exactly what I want. I keep the cube, but I get this beautiful, very spherical cutout, and I didn't have to do any work manually cutting away from the cube or anything like that. So I know this is a very simple operation, but I just wanted to show you how Houdini fundamentally changes the way you would go about this kind of operation. And here you might be thinking, well, okay, that's great, but I'm already a great artist, so why would I need to learn how to do this thing? There's two benefits to this approach. One is that if you're not great with manual dexterity like me, this can essentially help you a little bit. The other is just a way of thinking about shapes. So if you asked an artist with a classical training to just make this cutout from the box, they would just immediately understand it and start working on it. If you have a more programming type background or math type background like me, I did computer science in university, so I don't really know that much about art, but when I saw this Boolean type of approach to shapes, because of logic in math, I'm like, oh, okay, so you want to do the intersection and just keep this subset and, all the math stuff. So this was just easier for me to understand personally. This is not to say this is better or anything like that. It's just a different approach that I guess works for different people. So now that we covered what the basic workflow looks like in Houdini for this kind of thing, let's also talk about terrain a little bit. So Houdini is also good for making large terrain, right? And again, I don't know if you can see it, it's really tiny up here, but there's all these groups of presets and just really useful tools up here that you can just, with one click, create something that's in the ballpark of what you need, and then just do a few modifications and you should be able to get the results you want. So up here, there is one group called Terrain FX. And inside the Terrain FX, there's all these amazing things. There's terrain hills and mountain and valley and dunes, canyon, islands. There's really cool stuff in here. So let's click on Terrain Mountain. And did I click it? Yes. And already we jump inside it. But before we jump in, let's go back one step. So here we are in the view of our scenes, right? And in this case, I don't want to work on the box scene anymore, so I can just click this to stop showing it. And this is my scene with the terrain mountain. So right now it's just one node because it describes the entire scene, but I want to double click it to go inside it and see what the actual network is for this mountain. So I didn't do any of this. I just clicked the terrain mountain node and all this was placed here for me. And here you might be thinking, well, it's great, but I have no idea what just happened here. So I wouldn't know how to manipulate this or what this is. And here I think is where you can start to see the beauty of this node-based approach. So let's select the first node in this network here and see what it is. So it's called height field. So if you know about computer graphics, you might be familiar with height fields. This is basically just a 2D grid, so an XY field with just lots of points on it. Nothing special about it, but it's interesting because we can represent several types of terrain and objects with it. So nothing special about this. Again, it has some parameters up here for size and so on. Let's continue with this strange thing here, which is a tube. And if you see the settings up here, this is supposed to be a tube, but it's already customized, so the top side of the tube is tiny, and we end up with a cone shape instead. And you think, well, that's great, but how is that relevant? It's relevant because there is this node here that the template put down for us that's called height field project. So essentially, this node did all the work for us of projecting this tube shape onto the height field. And now we end up with, this is now a height field, this is a single object that has been shaped by the tube that we set there as a reference. So our goal here is to make a mountain, right? Now this is not very mountain-like at all. So for the next part in this template, they used this height field blur node. Let's see what it does. All it did was essentially take this very sharp corner that we had here from the height field project and smooth it out. And of course you can change here the type of blur or the method that you apply or the strength and the radius and so on. There's always so many options for each one of these nodes. But let's continue to try to make it a little bit more mountain-like. Let's go to the height field distort. And so you see that again, this node applies a distortion operation on this shape here, on this height field. So it doesn't do anything for the flat surface, but for this elevated surface already we have a pretty mountain-like surface right here. It's already starting to look like the result we want. Again, lots of options here to change the granularity of these slopes and like how big the resolution is and all that stuff. But it would be really nice if we could change the flat part here to be more realistic and more ground-like. So that's what the next node does. It applies noise. This node is called height field noise. It applies noise not only on the whole height field here, but it applies noise on top of the distortion we had in the previous step. So we keep the distortion, we keep the effect we had on the mountain, and on top of it, we add this noise. What this does is that it creates slightly more pronounced noise on the mountain itself, and slightly less so on the ground around it. So when you look at it, you get a very clear distinction on the eye of where the ground stops and where the mountain begins. So already we're in a pretty good spot here. Already this is looking quite mountain-like. Of course, this is not the final product, right? There's several steps after this. There's the UVing and texturing and poly-reducing and whatever you need to do for your game. But let's just take it one step further and say, how can we make it look a little bit better? So this last node down here is called height field erode. And the idea behind this node is, well, what if we took this terrain and we applied several months and years worth of rain and wind and natural phenomena to further change the look of this mountain, not in any type of random way, but in a more natural way that natural water, I suppose, would apply to a mountain. So here we use this tool down here that's basically just a numbering type of thing, and you can use this tool down here for animations or customizing a node. There's many ways you can use this. This particular node uses it for this type of erosion simulation. So you can think of each number as an epoch of the simulation. So you start with 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can go as far as you like, right? That's the beauty of this tool and Houdini, that you could do this up to 100, for example, and get a super eroded mountain. And then when you do, you can go back and, pick the exact moment that you like the most. So this way again, this is not the best mountain ever. You can still go on and increase the resolution and add features and so on and keep improving it. But the amazing thing to me, at least, was that with what we've been speaking here for maybe 5 minutes, and already we created this in 5 minutes. So in my career, whenever I asked someone to create a big environment or a mountain like this, regardless of the answer, it was much longer than 5 minutes, at least in the conversations I've had. So let me show you one more cool thing before we wrap this up. So here in the height field project step, we just have this cone, and we have the height field. Well, what if we want to make our mountain a little bit more interesting? Why don't I go ahead and add another cube right here, and take a look at it, and make it much larger, yay, kind of like this. And actually, because I'm used to game engines a bit more, I'm kind of comfortable using these controls directly on the shape to change the rotation of the object. But there's no easy way to move an object laterally when it's already rotated. So I'm just going to use these controls up here to move it a bit to the side. And also it would be nice to have the height field itself as a reference. So let's click that and continue playing. Rather, let's put the blue part here to see the height field, and let's click on the box node to see where it is. And let's move it a bit up and a bit to the side. This, and a bit off to the side like that. Okay, yes, good. Now, we like what we have here in this step, and we want to, or I want to add this box shape to it. So what I would do is put in, actually just copy this node. I'm gonna hold down Y to show this scissors thing and cut these two connections by dragging left click. And now this node is complaining that it doesn't have any inputs. So let's give it some inputs. We're going to take the same height field from here, put it on the left input, and we're going to take this box that we just put down and put it on the right input. And in a few seconds of work, we merged this cube with this height field. And this cube is a bit too high up, so let's bring it down a little bit. And yeah, maybe like this. And you can keep adjusting it as long as you want, right? So see the power of this. We already had the pretty mountain looking thing, but we wanted to take it a step further. So to add this box, we didn't have to start from the beginning. We keep our existing work and we just add to it, which I think is really cool. So now that we have our new height field project, let's make some space down here. Let's move these guys a bit down. And instead of just taking this input, let's take our updated input from the height field project with the cube inside. So what does that look like? Now there's an additional, like, smaller hill on the side of the mountain. And because everything in Houdini works procedurally, in the next step, when the distort is applied, we see that it's already applied to our new shape. And the same goes for the noise. There's this bump out here. And when we do the erode, we can take it back to 0 and we can restart the simulation. And we can see this bump here remains, and we have our little side hill, and we can make it as pronounced as we want. So of course we could go on forever with this, but I think you get the idea. Houdini is really powerful with this. If you have questions about how this works, or if you want to know any more topics, I'm really not a specialist in this, and Houdini can do all these different things, but perhaps I can discuss this again and maybe point you in the right direction. Anyway, this is my thoughts about why I think Houdini is cool. If you have similar experiences with it, please let me know about it. I would love to know what other usages there are for this software. And I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for your time. Have fun.